So I'm going to begin the presentation. So tonight is the second webinar. We have 15 scheduled, so it's going to cover pretty much touch on every element of the college advice, college admissions process. So last week we just did like an overview. Tonight we're going to focus on the Common App, and in particular, we're going to focus on just kind of like the perspective of the admissions office. Can someone give me some feedback? Are you guys, can you hear me? Is this, and is my screen visible? Can someone let me know if that's if you can see my screen? Thank you. Yeah, there are a bunch of slides that I will share. I'm going to share the ones from last time too, and I've added some additional slides. So that will definitely happen. So rather than just do it piecemeal, I'm going to do it all at once at the end. Okay. So who am I? So I am director of college advice for Kweller Prep, and I've been giving advice on college advice for a long time. I've been a recruiter working for the admissions office at the University of Michigan for over 20 years. So I give presentations to high schools. I do college fairs. I coordinate with the admissions office. So I have a lot of experience with an elite admissions office. I've also been giving private college advice for many, many years. So I've worked with all students from many different high schools and many different backgrounds, and I've had a lot of success, and that gives me a lot of confidence to speak about this to you. When my son was at Townsend Harris High School, I was giving presentations because I had this unique background, and a lot of parents were going through this for the first time. So I was inclined to share what I knew, and it is a daunting process. And then from that experience led me to become the PTA president. So that was a very rewarding experience. As I go through the slides, I'm going to throw a lot of information, and the pacing of it, I'm kind of trying to balance between covering a lot of material and concerned about the depth. So slow me down, or I may miss something, or something's confusing. Chat me, please, please. I really encourage that. It actually helps me a lot. And every like 6 or 7 slides, I'll stop. I'll answer it, because your questions are probably similar to what a lot of people are thinking. So let me just make sure I have this here. Okay. Anyway, so this is the lineup. I'm going to send this at the end as well, this slide. But let me just get through this. So we're in webinar 2. There are 15 total. Oh, I said 16. I think it's 15. I'm presenting these 5. The full list, I will share that at the end. When I present, because there's a lot of overlap, so I may not be able to get to a lot of the stuff today. I'm just going to touch on it. But let me just kind of point out a couple of things from past experience. This guy here. So the kind of the schedule was not the same as last year. There was some sort of little bit of confusion about that. So I kind of want to work it in. So this webinar here, the 4th on March 13th, that's going to be the financial aid. I've kind of put it here. I know it's not that prominent, but I'm giving you a heads up that that's been the most popular presentation, because I really get into how the financial aid works and the steps it takes and what to expect. And there's a lot of really useful information, because of course that's a major concern about college. I mean, it's very daunting, and the numbers are pretty steep. but there's mostly good news because there's very generous financial aid. I will talk about financial aid too, time permitting at the end of this presentation. And the other thing is, since they're talking about the Common App, there are so many elements to it. I'm not going to go into too much depth in any one, but the essays, which are huge, it's a huge part of the process. That's going to be on March 20th. So I'm going to get into a lot of details, how to write them. There's a lot of insights that I'm going to share with you on that webinar, the 5th webinar. So let me go on here. I'm just making sure there's a admitting everybody here. Okay. All right, let me go on here. Okay, so the overview of the college app, the Common App. So what is the Common App? So it is now used by 900 colleges. It's pretty much all the named schools, and there are only a handful of popular colleges that don't use it. The CUNYs do not use it. The SUNYs, yes. The CUNYs, no. University of Wisconsin, Georgetown are two that don't use it, but pretty much all the other schools do. So it opens on August 1st. That means you can actually look at it anytime. It's always open, but there's a new cycle. So a lot of the information will even if you put it in now, your input information, it will still go forward. So your student can start it right now. And I encourage that, even if you're just getting comfortable with what it looks like. And also see what the supplemental questions, I will talk about this more in a moment, but the personal statement is pretty much the same prompts. There's usually six prompts, plus a seventh prompt, which is you can speak about anything. But the supplemental questions for each college do change. So that's August 1st. So what is the Common App? It's kind of a brilliant idea. I mean, as the web became part of everyday lives, it was natural to have a Common App. So it collects all the information, so you don't have to keep repeating it. It's web-based, obviously, and it makes life much easier. I mean, one of the downsides from my own philosophy is it makes it so easy to apply to so many schools, and I'm not a big believer in that. But you can apply to, there's an unlimited number of schools you can apply to. So it's both, it gathers everything, what happens in the classroom, transcript, letters of recommendation, your scores, and things outside the classroom. This is basically everything that the colleges will evaluate students on. Now it's on the left, these guys, I mean, the transcript, that's taken care of by the guidance office. So you're not going to, there are the handful of colleges that actually ask you to input your transcript, but that's the exception. They could accept the transcript from the guidance office. So the guidance office has their own portal, different than what the student sees. And the letters of recommendation, same. So typically, the letters of recommendation are input by the guidance office. They actually use Naviance for that. So there is a back end connection between Naviance and the Common App. And the scores, a lot of students are free to input scores. You could send the transcript to the official scores, I mean. But the scores are typically optional. Some schools do require them. I'm going to talk about that in a bit. We're going to focus on the activities today. I'm going to touch on the essays and the awards and honors. So we're going to spend some time on those. Okay, so what is the Common App? What's in it? The personal statement. So the two, I would say, if you would ask me, what are these are the four big ones. I mean, there's a lot of like demographic information and technical information, but the challenging parts are these four. So in particular, the personal statement, that's really plays a big role in the process, in the evaluation. It's really an opportunity to express yourself. The supplemental essays. Some colleges don't have any. Many have one, some have two, some have short ones. It really runs the gamut. Um, and then the activities is an opportunity to show colleges what you've done out of the classroom. So there's some kind of tricks and insights that I'm going to share with you on how to fill that out. And of course, the last is the honors awards. So it's a good idea. I recommend that parents have their own account. You can also, of course, ask your child to share their password. But if that doesn't, if that this gives you another option. So if you once you say you're a first year student, it'll say you're a parent. If it asks you if you're a parent, you want to create what they call a practice account. So let me take a step back for a minute and kind of give you like this is kind of like a general picture because I get a lot of questions from parents about how things are weighted. So there's no one answer to it, but if I was like forced to kind of like balance it like on average, every single admissions officer will always tell you that the single most important component in admissions is the transcript. And I use that word carefully, transcript, and I don't say grades. Because when I say transcript, yes, grades matter, but the word transcript is containing the information about the courses you took. Is the student challenging themselves? Are they taking advanced courses? Are they pushing themselves within the context of the school? Of course, if the school doesn't offer advanced courses, then they're not going to be penalized for that. So within the context of that, they really do place an enormous effort, enormous amount of emphasis on the rigor of the course selection, and of course your grades. The scores, it really does vary a lot. I kind of like have a lot of this. This is kind of, I'm going to probably change this because I think the scores have probably gone down. This is a little bit of an older slide. Extracurriculars, this part here probably means more than I have represented here. And depending on the student, it could mean a lot more. Like if you're a standout in anything, and if the essays, I often think that maybe 20% of students have like a knockout essay, and that really could have an enormous impact on the application. Okay, let me start with the SAT scores because that is something that students can control more than, like, for example, letters of recommendation and uh, your grades are what your grades are. Of course, you do control it, but when you're applying, it's mostly in the past. So the best way of capturing the SAT scores is that it means less than the students think, but more than colleges are willing to admit. Now, it is optional. At most colleges, it's still optional, and they officially say the official policy is that it's optional, and it will not, if you do not send the scores, it will not count against you. But I have a lot of reservations about that. Basically, if you score the rule of thumb, and every situation is unique. But if you're in the middle 50% or higher, so they will quote the always provide the 25th and 75th percentile. If you're in there for sure, I would include it. Of course, anything higher would just be a bonus. So, but a fairly large percentage of students do not send in scores. I think of successful applicants, it runs about 30%. So it obviously does not really hurt in many cases. And one other thing about the SAT scores, as a rough guide, it does help. Like if you're looking for what schools to apply to, it kind of gives you a sense on the US News rankings to see where you fit in for that. It's a rough guide. And ideally, they should correlate to your transcript grades. If they don't, then the admissions officers will interpret it in a subjective way. So it's hard to predict. For example, if the SATs scores are very high, but the grades aren't, it could say that the student is not fulfilling their potential. If the SAT scores are much lower, and again, there's a huge range, so I hate to like make a definitive statement about this, but if the SAT scores are much lower than the equivalent grades, they might think that, oh, the student may have not be able to handle the greater rigor of college, but it's there's so many components that go into it. they use the term holistic a lot, and they really do mean that. So I would not put too much emphasis on that on the scores. Okay, letters, teacher recommendations. This is a big deal because they really want to see the student, what they do, and get like an objective opinion of what the student is doing in the classroom. Again, academics is by far the most important element in the admissions process. They want to see first and foremost, because colleges are about academics. Yes, there's a lot of stuff that go outside the classroom. So they want to see this. So typically, two classroom teachers are going to be required. Some colleges have one only. But since many of the schools have two, you're going to need to request two. So which two? So that's a good question. So from experience, ideally, and it doesn't have to stick to this, it's going to be junior year or senior year, preferably junior year, because in senior year, it will only be half of the year. So junior year, because it's recent, the teacher presumably will have you for the whole year. Sophomore year would not be ideal. Sophomore year, because it's not recent enough, and it would raise some questions about why the student didn't ask for a junior year teacher. So ideally, be one in the humanities, English, history, perhaps a foreign language, and then one in a STEM field. It should be from a teacher who you really feel that they're going to write something enthusiastic about you, which that's based on a conversation. How do you feel a rapport with the teacher? So that's kind of something that's very important, because they're going to be expressing what the student is like, not so much academically, yes, academically, but how are they as a person? And it really does make a difference in many cases. If it's a very, very enthusiastic letter, it could really matter. Every school, every college requires the guidance counselor recommendation. That's pretty much straightforward. A lot of them will just put down what you in the raves, but they would just sort of students will be asked to submit anecdotes about their that they would like to share with colleges. So let me look at the Common App for a second here. So this is by the way, this screenshot, just to illustrate what you'll typically see. This is Cornell, and so there are three tabs. The most of the material that you're inputting would be in the Common App, the middle tab. But you'll have a list of all the colleges that you've entered, that you're applying to in the first and second tabs. So they'll always give you on the main page, when you click on the college, it'll give you some of the key the requirements. So for example, Cornell is requiring 2 teacher evaluations, 1 optional. I do want to say a word about the optional. I've seen this, and people I've spoken to, unless it's very, very compelling, they don't like to have the optional. You have to also understand the perspective. A lot of what I'm going to be saying tonight has to do with the perspective of the admissions office, what they're thinking. So they're really busy during the admissions season, and they don't want to be burdened with extra work. So it's kind of like almost a courtesy. So they don't really want it unless it's really superlative. So that's some advice about that. Let me actually move to the Common App here. So this is the landing page. So you would sign in or create an account. So if you don't have an account, of course, you just create the account there. I logged in, and so I've already populated my colleges to the first thing that the student would do is you input the name of the school and then add it, and then it starts populating this list. So I was clicking on Cornell a moment ago, and you can just scroll down there and you can see it gives you the deadlines and a lot of helpful links too. Not that you can't find that, but it's good to have it all in one place. Okay, most of what we're going to be doing today is actually going to be in the Common App section. So let me go back to this for a moment. Let me talk about the personal essay. Again, for those just joining here, so yeah, so the detail on the I'm going to speak a lot about insights in how to write the essays. That'll be on March 20th. So let me just kind of give sort of like more of an overview now. It's really tricky. This is difficult. It's actually a good idea to start sooner rather than later. Perhaps even in the junior year. Many English classes actually require in the spring term. They will actually. I think it's a great idea. They'll have a excuse me, a unit that they'll teach on writing the personal essay, and that'll be a requirement. So they'll at least have one stake in the ground before the real one is due, because people procrastinate. So this is something that they will have to do. So that's a good thing. One of the challenges of the personal essay is it's like you have to like be soul searching. I mean, this is not a typical exercise that students who are 17 have to do. I mean, the ones that are most compelling are the ones that are the most revealing about the person, and that's asking a lot of maturity for someone who's still in high school. So for many people, not all, some people are natural at this. I've worked with so many different students. So some just require more structuring, more motivation, and just more just not maybe not used to it. That idea of being open, and it does really make a difference to do that. Just take a step back. The college admissions intensity, the whole process is really, it's basically September and October. Those are the 2 months in the senior year. Those first 2 months of senior year is where it really gets busy. So the first deadline you're going to face is November 1st, because that's the early action and early decision typically are the 1st of November. So you really want to have everything in. Just to let you know, some of the private high schools actually require students to actually have everything. It's like a requirement. Every student must have their Common App complete by like the last week of October. So even though public schools generally don't have that, I recommend that you kind of self-impose that deadline. So the supplemental essay, again, this each school is different. The most common one is why us. They want to see your passion for the school, and it's kind of like an argument against this Common App idea that people are just like clicking on the box just to apply because it's so easy to do that. So it kind of slows that process down. You researched it, and there are strategies in how to write that essay. We're going to talk about that in one of the other presentations, in presentation 4. And there are a lot of short questions. A lot of them will be typically shorter than the 650-word personal statement. So they might be 200 words, 300 words, which is basically half a page, or sometimes less. Sometimes it'll be like short answer questions, like they'll do it by characters. And some are really long, like some of the schools, like Yale has like 7 questions. So they do require time. So it's good to get a head start on that. Okay, I'm going to actually spend some more time on the activity section, because that's not a section that we're going to focus on in the future webinars. So you can list up to 10 extracurricular activities. It doesn't have to be 10. The typical examples, so this could be pretty much soup to nuts. It's anything. So it could be a job that someone has, even babysitting, community volunteer, Model UN. These are just examples. Anything to do with sports, this is the place to put it down. And you're going to be able to describe what you've done. So if you're on a team and you've had a leadership position, you're captain, this is the place where you're going to describe what your role is. Science research, if you did research at all, maybe in a competition, robotics, school newspaper is a very compelling example of something that would really be welcome on the activities section. You've done something unique or different, something outside the school. This is the place to put that. And it's telling colleges what the student is doing with their spare time. I mean, they're good students. I mean, they're great students. But how well do you manage your time? That's another thing they're looking for, because college is demanding, and college is going to have. There's a lot of freedom in college, and freedom to study and maybe do research with a professor. Maybe they really want students to be active in the larger community. That's like a big part of these elite colleges. What do I mean by that? When a student being accepted, the admissions office wants to see students that are going to take advantage of the resources that are at the school. I mean, the professors, I mean, these schools have gathered these brilliant professors and these research labs and so many different structures that are on the campus. They want to make sure that the student is going to use it, that they have the drive to do it, they have the passion. And the way to measure that is by looking at what you've done in high school. I mean, they're thinking it's going to continue. So it's very important to show what you've done. Now, as far as the 10 goes, look, everyone is different. You know, some people don't have 10. But I will say this, even if you have to fudge something, it's good to have 10, and here's why. If you put 10, it leaves doubt that there could be more than 10, 12, 14, but you're only allowed to put in 10. So that's, if at all possible, try to, and there's many activities that students don't realize that would count. This is the actual formal prompt that's used. So they're listing the different types. This is what I've talked about before, some examples. So arts, music, clubs, community engagement, etc. This is an example of when I work with students, how to organize it. Let me show you on the Common App what it looks like. So if you go to the Common App, the middle tab, and you go down to activities on the left navigation, you'll see activity 1, activity 2, etc. Right? It's kind of like cluttered. It's difficult, and you're typing it directly in here. It's easy to make a mistake and get organized. So with Kweller Prep clients, among many things, we really help structure it. So I just want to use this example here to show you what I mean. You know, it's very interesting. You know, there's one thing about the content. The content has to be there. It's also showing, if you think about it, take a step back to successfully navigate the Common App. It's really important to get into the shoes of the admissions office, because when you do anything in life, whether it's for your boss or you're doing an activity or you're playing tennis or whatever it might be, you have a different audience, right? And you want to perform for that audience. So understanding what they're looking for, what animates them, what scores points with on this process is to get into the shoes of the admissions office. So let me share some things with you. So when you carefully word things and use up the full amount of space, that shows that you care and that you put effort into it. You're diligent. Those are all big factors in kind of influencing the admissions office, but those are characteristics that they want to see. So they're seeing it indirectly. Yes, the content, of course, but also how you phrase things. How is it sloppy? Is it careful? So this kind of format really helps students structure it. So what I have students do is, first, it's just sort of like in the beginning, we're just going to list them. This, of course, this is from a Google Sheets, so it could be sorted. So you first put down the rank, you know, whatever that might be, and then you could always sort that later. So the idea is just to get it down there. So sometimes what I often found with students is sometimes what they write, it's not going to fit into 150 characters in the main part of this thing. Um, it's 150 characters. Oops, let me go back here for a second. Um, so yeah, you can see the character count here. So sometimes there's if you've done a lot, I mean, it's asking a lot to squeeze it into it. But I mean, I've actually had a lot of success, even though it says it is very limited. It's about 30 words because you can actually spread it out into these other categories. So if it's running over, there are clever ways of manipulating the description so that it spills over into the other sections, which allow more characters than you typically would have. And you want to be very careful about the hours because it should add up to something reasonable. So you want to be very, very careful about how you answer these questions here. So this student is showing a lot of variety in what they did. So that you ideally, and then everyone's different, but to have something like in sports, to have something there, it shows balance. I mean, it's not just academic. Again, it's the idea is like, how are you using your time and how creative are you? How passionate about one thing? One other thing that I absolutely should mention is this idea of a theme. Some of the most successful, this is not a rule that applies in all cases, but I would say largely if you can, the student needs to take a step back before they fill out the application and reflect about what really they're passionate about. Because the theme should weave its way through the entire application, like something that you really want to do, whether it's art or music, writing, science research. There's something about that the missions officers really like to see. Is there something that is threaded throughout the application? Because they want to see students, the ideal, from their perspective, the ideal class is made up of students that have these unique talents. So imagine a community where there's many different unique specialized kids that have this special talent that they can share that talent with their classmates. Yes, they're balanced. But having that one passion makes the community itself better. And that's a big thing that they look for, a very big deal. Okay, so then talk about the honors and awards. Now, this is often difficult to fill out. This cannot be sports related, so it's one major restriction. So it has to be related to something to do with academics. This is the prompt. Do you wish to report any honors related to your academic achievements? So just to give you an example, this is actually from a student that I had this year, and he only had one that he could think of, the AP scores. So he had enough to qualify for AP Scholar with distinction. And then that was it. But if you're clever, there are things you can come up with. For example, the newspaper he worked on, he didn't win the award. But if the newspaper won the award, yes, you could put that down because he was a major part of the paper. The paper won an award when he was the sports editor and the editorial editor. So that is absolutely permissible. So you can list up to 5 of those. But in other words, what I'm trying to say is you'd be surprised what awards you can find if you really think, because sometimes you didn't even consider it. Like in 9th grade, you won a writing award, or the teacher had a contest, or there was a contest in the school, or something like that. So there's a lot there. As far as like information, there's so much information. I'm going to provide a list actually at the end in the document that has all the links. But just there's a wealth of information, but one source that is really important is the college themselves. So I just gave you 2 examples here, but most colleges will have, if you look in the admissions tab, they'll have, because advice, because that they want to help students. Schools also want to show that they care. So they're gonna provide information. These are just 2 examples. Yale, you can see on this section here. It gives a lot of information here. A lot of them have blogs of students to help prospective students with the admissions process, what's going on campus. So you want to learn about the school as well. These podcasts are useful admissions. So you're hearing actually from the admissions officers themselves. So that could be awfully valuable. And then you could use University of Rochester, which is a school that I really like, and they have these three sections that you could talk about the essays. A lot of them will actually have sample essays that were successful, that they want to help students with tips about what should be done, what shouldn't be done, etc. Okay, good. Let me take any questions. If anyone has a question, you could chat it or you could ask it. But I don't know the pacing of this, how I'm doing with that. So that would be help me kind of like modulate myself. So if you have any questions so far, and you could, while I'm going, you could always ask a question. I'll answer it when I have a pause. But please chat. Everyone should be able to chat. I think that that would be helpful. So no questions so far. Okay, so let me talk about deadlines for the Common App. So I touched on this before about the November 1st. So you don't want to exclude, look, I'm not saying early decision is not for everybody. Many students do very well without applying early decision. But you don't want to be excluded from early decision just because you haven't done it yet, because you've procrastinated. So that's hence the idea that you really want to target end of October to have it done, because you want to be in a position to apply ED. So ED, pretty much every private college in the country has ED. Most of them have 2 rounds of ED. So ED is November 1st typically, but November 15th is another common date, but it's in the first half of November. If they do have second round, and again, most colleges have 2 rounds, that's in typically the first half of January. Public colleges do not have early decision because they don't feel like that. The binding nature of early decision is not something that a public college wants to impose on students. So early action is more of like the ideal state. Early decision early decision can definitely boost your chances because it's the ultimate proposal. You're saying I am basically want to marry you because it's absolutely binding. So you really can't get out of it. So when you do early decision, you definitely want to know if this is the school you want to go to. And it's frustrating because you're not going to be able to, number one, see which schools you would get into otherwise. And the other part is for those who need financial aid, and most people do, you won't be able to compare financial aid offers. So one thing about regular decision or early action, come the end of March, you might have, say, 5 offers or more. And you can choose based on the financial aid. And also one thing that a lot of folks don't know is that financial aid is actually negotiable. So if they make you an offer and you have a better offer from another school, you can ask that's the school that you prefer to go to match it. And from my experience, they usually will. If you can actually do a screenshot, share the actual offer, the financial aid offer. So I talk more about that. So staying organized, believe me, when September and October hit, there's a lot of moving parts to this process. So you really want to stay organized. So I have this is a document that I will share with you to structure. This is actually from a student. So the deadlines, notice it's color coded here. So as the deadlines come up, I put it in red. If it's like a week away, maybe it's in orange. If it's distant in the future or it's been completed, then it's in green. So this is kind of something that just a student had. And you talk about the supplements. You want to stay on top of that. As they're done, you can turn it, you can color it green or things like that. So and the letters of recommendation. So this kind of organizes everything. The interview. So many schools don't have an interview. Some interviews you sign up on your own. You go to the website and sign up. The most typical situation is in an interview is, especially at the elite schools, they contact you. And they don't, because they have so many applicants, they can't possibly offer an interview for every student. But again, for most of these, the most typical interview, and if you could asking me, I would say maybe 2/3 offer interviews and 1/3 do not for the selective schools. So typically, if they do offer an interview, the process is they will reach out to you. Always accept the interview. You have an option, obviously, to decline it, but I would always accept the interview. And that's a whole nother conversation, which I'll talk about. I think it's in the webinar, I think the 5th webinar, about that. I'm just looking at some of the questions. Just take a brief moment here. So a parent is asking, would the activity section include summer programs like SYEP? Absolutely. So summer is really where a lot of the depth comes in. I mean, yes, of course, during the school year, there's clubs, yes, but some of the it's very important to organize your summers that way. So that's going to be a big part of the that section, the activity section. So there's a question about the ED and financials. So let me repeat that because I might not have been clear. Yeah, that's the thing. ED really is binding. I mean, technically, financial aid, you can get out of it, but keep in mind that when you sign ED, the guidance office, your guidance counselor must sign it, the parent signs it, and the student signs it. So if you get out of it, it could really hurt the school. So it's really not recommended at all to get out of the ED. And the financial aid package, by the way, something I'm going to touch on at the end of this if we have time, but I'll just mention it right now, the net price calculator. So there is a way of finding out how much aid you'll get, roughly speaking, and it's pretty accurate, is the net price calculator. So yes, it is binding. But you can't negotiate it. That's the thing. It's actually, I take that back. It is somewhat negotiable. So say, for example, you get an ED and they may have missed something happened, or you feel it's not fair. They will listen to you. They will. So I stand corrected. It is somewhat negotiable, but it's not a guarantee. That's why I hesitate. But I absolutely will say that. If the student doesn't have any awards, many students don't. So no, it's not really going to hurt the application. But so looking at holistically, but again, you'd be surprised what counts as an award, an application, and an honor. So that's a conversation that we would have privately as a client. Okay, so let me that was pretty good. I'm going to finish the other questions, but let me just go back to this for a moment. This is the document that I'm going to share with you at the end. This is what it looks like. So it's just an empty sheet there. Okay, let me talk about the view from the admissions office. I touched on some of these points before. Again, they want to build a community of students that have these different passions. They're not expecting students to have 2 or 3 of these. They're really focusing really on each individual is standing out for something. Yes, they're great students and they've done a lot. They can manage their time. They're serious, but they have like this. That's why the theme is so important, because you're trying to express to admissions what is unique about the student, what is special about them. That's something that you really have to think about, and it's not obvious to communicate that. So it's really worth the effort to kind of like give the student kind of an edge, because it's very, very competitive, especially the higher you go up in the Ivy Leagues, for example, or Northwestern or Duke, these very elite schools. It's extremely competitive. So every little bit helps. So these are some of the thoughts that I share with you. So diversity means a lot of things. Again, back to this idea of the community. They don't want everyone from the New York metro area. So being from another part of the country, but you can flip the table. Obviously, New York is New York, right? You can't change where you live. But then if you flip the table, if you apply to schools outside the New York area, that now it's an advantage. For example, you apply to Case Western Reserve or the University of Wisconsin or Northwestern or any school that's out of the geographic region. Now New York, which was a disadvantage, now becomes an advantage. And that goes back to something about I spoke about on the first webinar, that when you devise the college list, you do not want to limit it to just like the names that previous classes are popular with, right? So you really want to open it up. There are 2,000 colleges in the country, so you really want to keep a very broad mind in when you pick the college list. A lot of great colleges out there might be popular in Chicago or in California or other parts of the country, but not here. But you want to allow that to be part of the process. I love this quote because this captures my theme tonight, which was having that special passion. It's a circle with a spike in it. That was once the admissions officer said that, and it really stuck with me. So, the well-rounded student, they're good in STEM, they've done well in humanities, maybe they're an athlete, maybe they're great in art, but they have some specific passion that makes them special, that really stands out. That's the idea of the theme. And again, there's another quote here: colleges are not looking for the well-rounded kid, they're looking for the well-rounded class. So that really captures that again, the spike. I want to give you kind of an insight into like actually how the admissions process works, because the more you know, the better you're going to be able to higher comfort level and better be able to answer all these questions and create this Common App package together. So here's an example. Tufts University is a great school, very selective. They have a 10% admission rate. It's early decision and early decision and regular decision. So I'm talking here just about regular decision, but the process for early is the same. So they get 31,000 last year. They had 31,000 applicants. Every application is read by 2 admissions officers. One is always regional. So they divide the country into territories. So that territorial admissions officer will be familiar with each high school. And then they have someone from another territory. Everyone from every territory must be the second reader in another territory. So they don't necessarily know the high school that the student went to. And the standard is 1 to 5. 1 is the highest. And if you're 1 or 2, so 2 is in, 3 is not in. So if you're 1 or 2 right off the bat, you'll be admitted. So in this particular example, I have 1,000 students who are admitted because they got a 1 or a 2. So what goes to committee, you can see that number is pretty big, and half the students from the committee get in. So you can see, so it's 2,500 students will be offered admission from the committee. So the committee is if you're a 2 minus or a 3 plus. In other words, you're on that boundary, you're on the fence. That's considered to be an application that would go to committee. So that's a big chunk of this, and that takes a lot of time. So during the peak of the season, they're working like 6 or 7 days a week, and they'll meet 3 times a week. And at a big table, there might be 12 admissions officers, and it's majority rules. So usually what typically is the regional admissions officer will present. It's like the total conversation is 10 minutes. So they'll present the student, advocate for the student, and then there'll be a discussion, and then there'll be a vote. Very quick. One of the reasons why I'm describing this is so important is because it gets back to something that is such an important part of this process, which is being likable. So in the essays, in the letters of recommendation, kind of you want to win the heart of the admissions officer, because at the end of the day, it's a subjective decision. So that is like a theme that has to be kind of infuses the entire process to be likable. So that would be like, for example, excuse me, on the essays, you don't want to be like braggy at all, because that would turn off a lot of people. So be very careful about that. Okay, so this is something that I wanted to end with, which is financial aid, because I can't talk about the Common App without really talking about financial aid. So again, there's a presentation coming out where I can get into more detail, because we only have about 10 minutes to talk about this. So financial aid. So the big questions is, how does financial aid influence admissions? And how does it influence the generosity of financial aid? So it does influence admissions in many cases. In some cases, it doesn't. Let me tell you how. So the big thing to know is this concept of need blind versus need aware. Now, the gold standard is need blind. But need blind is very expensive, because need blind is saying we will take unlimited number of students who may need aid. And it's very expensive. And if you have that policy, and only 30 colleges are officially need blind, private colleges. The publics in state are always need blind. But of the private colleges, they basically have like they're the wealthiest schools, and there's a big correlation between the endowment, the wealth of the school, and how selective they are. So all the Ivies, for example, Duke, Northwestern, those great schools, those very, very competitive schools, are need blind. So need blind means that they do not consider your financial need in making the decision to accept you. Furthermore, in nearly all cases, if a school is need blind, if a college is need blind, that means that whatever your need is, they give you 100% of that in a grant, so no loans, or the loan might be very, very small. So that's what it is. So you can see here the need aware is much more common. So it's not, by the way, it's not just binary like that. So if you're not need blind, the need aware grows as you go down the U.S. News list, roughly speaking. So left selective, it's like a school that's just under the need blind, so that they factor in need just a little bit. So this is kind of like an illustrative slide that kind of gives you a sense of what it means. So the most selective school will give everything you need in a grant. So 100% of what is needed is in the form of a grant in that case. But as the selectivity goes down, less is. So I have another slide that kind of breaks that down. So, there's a lot here, but the idea is this light blue is that's the gold standard. That's what you want, because basically you don't have to like not go because you can't afford it. That's the idea. So that's sort of the gold standard, because every school would like to have that. In other words, if they want to take you because you're a qualified student and they really want you, they're not going to lose that student because they can't afford it. Because that's kind of somewhat of an unfortunate or even an ugly situation. So I want to go to school X, but I can't afford it. Therefore I can't. So that's something that they all really, really do try to avoid. So financial aid is this amazing concept that they will pay you to go to a college and you're making your life better. You're advancing yourself. As you can see, this graphic is, as you go down the selectivity, you can see that the generosity goes down. So that's what I mean. The need-based grant, you can see that shrinking, and they're putting in more loans, and then there's need-based grants. Merit-based grants. Fill in more of the financial need. This is kind of a interesting slide. It's a little bit hard to read, so let me kind of describe what I'm trying to communicate here. Because this is a very common question: how does financial aid affect admissions? So financial need, if you think about it, if you have no financial need at all, and you're not need blind, so this is obviously schools that are need aware. And it's kind of like, this is meant to be kind of illustrative. It's not like, don't take this literally too much. But the idea is that if you have no need, they can take unlimited students like that because they have a limited budget. Most schools, not the Ivies, Yale doesn't have a limit on their financial aid. They can give anything. But most schools are not like that. Most schools have a realistic budget. So they set aside a certain amount of money. So say, for example, you needed, say, 60,000 in financial aid, and you have two students with 30,000 each. You can see how they kind of like juggle the money. So if you have no financial need, that would help you. If you have some financial need, like unfortunately here in the middle, will you not get in? No, it has maybe a 10 or 50% decrease in your likelihood of getting in. And people with a lot of financial need, actually, it does help you because they feel like you've overcome a lot. So that's also socioeconomic diversity, and overcoming adversity is a big part of the process. And they also want to, again, getting the idea of diversity. That's part of the process. So this is just a realistic slide of what it's really like. Again, you're not going to not get in, but to be realistic, it does depress your chances if you're sort of in the middle class and you need some financial aid. Again, how much financial aid you need is a factor. So this is one thing. Again, I'm going to have a whole thing about financial aid that I talk about in much more depth. So I was only able to give a subset tonight. But let me talk about this slide. So this is actually interesting. Those who are having their child apply to college for the first time, you might not be aware of this, but in 1985, the federal government instituted this requirement called the net price calculator. So this is actually a requirement. Every college must have it by law. Some colleges actually bury it, but if you type it into the search, which is always on the main page of of every college website, you can type it in and it'll come right up. So the net price calculator it only takes about 10 to 15 minutes to fill it out. It will give you an estimate of what your financial what the need. So the definition of net price is actually a legally defined term. So the net price is the amount you'll pay. I mean, it's the total price, the sticker price, the total price, tuition, room, board, fees, etc., less the need-based grant. So loans don't count, because loans you have to come up with. So this is the money that the parent has to come up with. The family has to come up with this amount. So that's what a net price is, net of the need-based grants. Okay. So that's really useful. So you can go to a bunch of colleges. You'll see actually quite a big difference in what they'll provide. So these are the next ones. So next week we have public colleges, state colleges. I'll talk a little bit others in the webinar 4, and that's the big one, paying for it all. So this is going to be mostly about financial aid. Is going to be March 13th, and then the essays, all the like insights on how to do that, March 20th, and there are others as well as essays after that. I'm going to give you all these links. Let me give it to you right now. So let me share this doc. This is the link right here. And I'm going to put that in the chat right now. So this is links to all of the shared docs. So you should get that. Let me take some questions. Let's see here. So I am going to look. I'm going to wrap up in just a few minutes. Okay. So I'm going to answer these questions. I'd actually open up the floor if you want to actually ask a question. You can unmute yourself. Let me just see here. Oh yeah, so one is there's a parent asking, Alex is asking about the professional tests. There are a bunch of tests that you could for young people to see where their strengths are. So Naviance, which every high school in New York City, they have a contract, has that Naviance. So if you search around that, it's actually a very rich website. There's a lot in there. They have a really good package that software package that helps identify possible careers. There's the famous Briggs test also. You can get that. I think it might be free. Briggs, Briggs. That's it's an old test. I think they revised it, but it's a classic test about they ask you a bunch of questions and it helps identify strengths and possible career. Alexander, does taking AP Calculus AB show negative for admissions rather than the APBC? Not necessarily, no. I mean, it's not so much negative or positive. It's really, you really want to be who you are. And but the idea of the application is, yes, you who you are, but you want to present that who you are in the best light. You want to optimize that, and that's what we can do. So now AP Calculus in general is a great achievement. So that's, you're at the top. So no, I wouldn't say so. Absolutely not. It's also who the student is. But no, students should push themselves, but they don't want to go crazy. You don't want to go overboard. You want to be yourself. And that will rule the day. One thing I didn't get to talk about, now it reminds me, I want to mention the word fit, because the fit of the school is the most important characteristic. When the college admissions officers and the student do their homework, when the student does their homework, it really is objective about who they are and where they want to go. They visited the school, they did all their research, they went to the blogs, they went to YouTube and saw a bunch of student presentations about the school. They've College Confidential, the forums and what have you. They made a list, and the colleges, the college admissions office, they're professionals. That's what they're paid to do, to look for fit. So it's not necessarily the best student; it's the best fit. So You want to be happy in college because that's what's going to make you the most productive. And that's the whole point of college admissions. The whole point of the Common App in college admissions is you're expressing yourself in an honest way, in a transparent way, to see where you're fitting in the most. Where will you be happiest? I mean, I personally know students who their first choice was MIT. For example, I can think of a couple of students that was their choice, and they're not happy there because that was the most prestigious school, and they were science people, but they really didn't do their research, and they weren't happy there. So it's not necessarily the prestige that's going to rule the day. Okay, that's a very important message that I want to communicate to parents and students. So it says there was a question about financial need. Yes, they are aware of financial need. And there's something called an enrollment office. So there's the admissions office and there's an enrollment office. So they do look at that. They are aware of it. Need blind, they're not. Need aware, they are. Most colleges are need aware. So they are aware of your financial need. And by the way, you check it off right off the bat in the Common App. One of the first questions you'll see is, are you applying for financial need? Don't lie about that because believe me, it's not going to matter that much. It's also how much financial need you have. I don't want to overdo that idea. I just want to be honest. It makes a little bit of a difference and it depends on where you go to school. So it basically, you should, yeah, I'm kind of like hesitant to share that, but I just wanted to be honest about it. So it doesn't really mean that much, honest. It really does not. And that's it. So thanks I hope made your evening was worthwhile. And I'll see you next Thursday. Have a great evening. Take care.